All right, everybody, we're live here with Shelf Space, episode 31. And as always, we've got Charles live from Montreal.
Hey, everybody.
We have Gina from NHL Hub City, Toronto.
Hi, everyone.
NHL Hub City.
And myself, I'm Chris. I'm out in Edmonton. We're live across Canada, and we have an extremely special guest that we're very excited to bring to you today. I don't think I'm overstating it saying industry legend, Mr. Mark Newman. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you very much.
Definitely welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, for those of you who are new to the show, we're going to talk about Mark's background. We're going to talk about his career, his Bowen days, the Sideshow days, and a couple other topics there. So we're not going to waste too much of your time, Mark. So we're going to jump into things here and start off with talking about how you got to where you are. So Gina, why don't you lead us off here?
I want to ask first, very first question is, obviously Chris, Charles, and myself, Mark, are very aware of your work. And I'm sure those who are watching us quite aware of your pieces and your career. And anyone who's been collecting statues is probably aware of your career and all of the statues that you've worked on. So my first question is, when you meet a stranger on the street and then they ask you, hi Mark, what do you do for a living? What do you say? How do you describe your career?
Well, it's never like a one word, like somebody's like, I'm an accountant or I'm a banker. I just first say I'm a sculptor, and then they kind of cock their head, and I go, I'm an artist, mostly in the commercial realm, which means I actually make money. Then and say, well, oh wow, I never heard of that, and then they'll ask another question, but it's usually either artist or sculptor first, and then I have to elaborate before their head turns the other way. So, and it's always gets a wow, I never, really, what medium do you work in? And then I don't know, have the older people say, well, did your parents want you to do that?
So then how did you get into this career? What was your entry into this industry and into this specific type of art?
Well, I was always drew and played with clay when I was a kid, and in high school I was in the art department and in the drama department building sets, and always was into that. So I knew early on I wanted to be an artist of some sort. I found out I guess my senior year, that thing called commercial art. You can actually make, you can get a job doing art, and this was in the 80s. So I decided to look into art schools. So I went to I finally found one after art, which was in San Francisco, not too far from where I lived, and I went to a junior college first and took 2 years. And then I went to Academy of Art College in San Francisco, which it was a smaller school at that time, and it was an illustration major I got into. So I was drawing and painting and learning illustration, and so I got into sculpture during that time on my own. I was really wanted to be a special effects artist at one point, because I was totally into like Planet of the Apes movie was like mind blowing to me, with where they wear they animate the face with their own faces. So doing sculpture for that, I was looking into with Fangoria magazine and all these magazines at the time.
Yeah.
Although I didn't want to move to LA, because I didn't really want to move there for that. That's where it was happening. But I just kept working at it, and I found a job right out of art school working for a mask company that put out ceramic masks that hung on the wall. And it was a big thing in the 80s, is kind of that decorative art stuff. And so I knew I can at least find jobs in this stuff and work in this sense. Going through the illustration department, the whole program, and realizing later after I graduated, I like sculpture. Now what the hell am I going to do? How am I going to transition into that? And so it kind of fell into my lap in that sense, and at least finding a job right off, and then opening my eyes to the gift industry of going to some of they were called, where they just all these companies that sell little sculpture figurines for different reasons, and And so just found work in that, and it just kind of kept going. I was always freelance, and kind of got jobs here and there. So it snowballed into that. So.
Oh, that's great. Did your parents support you while you were going through your teenage years? And
yeah, actually they did. They were always really encouraged by, I was drawing all the time, and oh, Mark, they got a little artist in the family and all this stuff. And I don't know, they never said or expressed concern about my well-being as as an adult trying to make a living and getting outside so they encouraged me through art school, and which was really great. I had friends in art school that struggled with that. Their parents, this is really what they want to do. I don't want to follow your footsteps. I don't want to be a lawyer, scientist. So yeah, I was fortunate enough to be that supported by my family.
Yeah,
you're very
that
lucky.
is
A
good.
lot of artists, kind of struggle through this era, and it's for all art, right? If they want to go into acting or music, and
Absolutely.
parents just kind of downplay it, and they think like, oh, it's so rare, it's 1 in a million. Well, aren't you 1 in a million? So it really helps that you did have the support and clearly the talent to move forward. So it seems like you've been working nonstop since you got your first job.
Yeah, it has been that way. Luckily, I mean, it's been slow spots and worrying about what I'm going to do. We had roommates, getting out of art school first, living in the city with 5 other art student friends, or 3 of them, and so we're all kind of in the same boat, trying to navigate and find out, how can we do this. So and even back then, it was not at all the amount of type of jobs and professions you can get in the art industry, because this was way before digital, even digital. Like when I graduated art school in '86, they just started a animation program throughout the school, where they were learning the simple flash animation on computers and computer graphics, and then it was like, wow, what's that? And I didn't pay attention to any of that. I just was working traditionally way until ZBrush and way until the collectible industry was using digital art, and everyone started to go that direction. I had to kind of force myself to learn it and embrace it, which was a little bit of a struggle. But
you adapted.
Huh?
You adapted.
Yeah, had to adapt, or else
or die.
Or else look back at my parents.
Is my room still there?
Well, looking back though, how instrumental would you say art school was in terms of your learning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it was, yes, especially since being an illustration major and then going into sculpture. I'm like, what, did I waste all that time? And I didn't. The most I got out of art school was drawing from the model, live model sessions, where, I mean, all the foundation courses and all through it was a 3-year program. You had model drawing classes, interspersed between technique painting and different ways of, learning. So you're always drawing from the model in 3D,
Right.
just drawing a 3D image on a 2D surface. That's the best training you can get. It's just see
Right.
what happens with
But then you're actually doing the opposite now. You're taking 2D drawings and making them 3D.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I mean,
Sorry, it was like that, working with clay, doing all that, and now it's digital, so it's back onto a flat screen.
well, that's right.
I call it 2.5D because but it's still.
That's right. Well, Charles, Chris, and I obviously have not ever been to art school. I don't think we've ever walked in. So I guess our picture, what we see of it, is just what we see on TV. Is it? I'm picturing the model in the middle of the class, and all the students are surrounding and just learning how to, as you said, make that 3D person into 2D.
Yeah, it's just for the drawing classes that were like that. Just a big old room, modeling.
Right.
Sometimes it's clothes figure modeling. They have different costumes. Sometimes it's nude. Sometimes it's just heads and hands drawing classes. But it's all everybody in there, sitting on their bench with a little flat easel in front of you.
Right.
And your newsprint and your charcoal, and so you had to learn. Okay, you're going to draw with charcoal, and we didn't do that growing up. And
Right.
hold the the charcoal on the side of your hand and work like this, so you're more free. So you almost had to relearn to draw, even in a sense. But the teacher would walk around and say, "Look at the light, how it turns, and make sure you." So
Was there much of like competition? I mean, you're like looking at your classmates' illustrations. I'm sorry, I'm asking because this is all I see of this type of art school is just on TV. So, like, is there competition? Like you're looking at your classmates and seeing their illustrations and going, "Oh man, she or
yeah,
his,
I mean,
yeah,
I don't know if I call it competition as much. Some people take it that way and get a little like irritated if someone's better and they get jealous or whatever. But it's more of a learning from each other. And I mean, it was really cool to just to talk and meet people like that and say, "Oh, I love that. How you doing that? And how did you do that?" And then you go off to coffee during break and talk more about that, and just you're inspired by your classmates and the people ahead of you. How, wow, look at what they doing now, and I want to do that. So it's more inspiring and just to drive you to be better. And I've known people who would make themselves miserable because they didn't embrace that, and they would just kind of shut away, and then the next year they wouldn't be there or something, or
Right. They can't keep it up.
and they just were overwhelmed because they weren't as good, or they didn't feel they was good or as good, and they thought it was not as easy for them as it was for the ones that are good. I don't know. It's a lot of things. Yeah, as long
I
as you
imagine
embrace-
that's pretty tough to get a grasp of. I mean, I'm an engineer. I went to school. It was all numbers. So, I mean, you knew how good you were compared to everyone else. It was a number, right? With art, I mean, I imagine you get some kind of grade in the end, but I mean, there's some subjectivity there, right?
Yeah, and which I didn't understand. They also had a fine art program, a department where, I don't mean like fine art. And it's like, how do you
Hey, down with fine art.
how do you grade art? I don't know how they can teach painting and stuff and techniques of how to paint, but then when you're supposed to do what you want and do what you feel, back to representational, it's like it's all over the board. So in structure, illustration, and techniques and drawing to get something, to get a job, or for a magazine article or whatever, you have to learn how to draw and make something look real. And then fine art, they're all over the place, which that's what you're supposed to do. So I always assume to really put a grade on something like that, like, well, it's supposed to look messy and sloppy. That's my style.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Mm. And in those days when you were sculpting in those classes, like, were you already thinking at this point, I want to sculpt superheroes, I want to sculpt mainstream characters? Was your mind going there as like a possibility of going there?
Well, I never did sculpture much in art school. It was all drawing and painting. And so I took one, I mean, I did it on my own when I was at home and doing masks, like on a plaster cast of my face and just sculpting another face on top of it and make a mask out of it. So Halloween was my time of year, man. I was
I
so much.
bet.
Mm.
That I learned on my own and doing stuff. So art school, I only took one final sculpting class, like my last semester, and started sculpting and stuff. So I already kind of knew what to do. So I was already ahead of people that were just jumping in. But so I never thought of being a sculptor as a career at that point at all. So I was still all over the place. What am I going to do as an artist? I like to draw and I like to make things. I was more of a cartoony style and I like that kind of stuff. But I was just, okay, here's what I'm aiming towards. It was never that, especially getting out and I like 3D. Now what the hell am I going to do, But
So,
again,
d-
the effects thing was like, I love all that. That's what's passion. When I see that, I just got to somehow get into that. Hopefully it'll come up to the Bay Area and not have to move to LA. But yeah, so then I discovered the gift industry, and you can make stuff and company produces it to sell. And that was even before doing the comic book stuff. It was a lot of different things, which
do you remember what your first paid gig was in sculpting?
it was during that. It was one of those ceramic mask designs that I did for the company. I worked for them for a while, and it was basically doing a sculpture of a set I did was like the comedy tragedy, the happy set.
Right.
Kind of stylized, so I was able to design it and they were just flat back, and then the sculpt of the face about life size. And then I did a puffy cloud, a cloud blowing. So these different characters, and it was okay. It was fun, but not great. But I was getting paid, and then this company wanted to design a fantasy Wizards and Dragons kind of line of like they were going to be the resin figures. So I was able to draw and design stuff like that on you know, just trying to do stuff for this company that was just starting up. Ended up going, they wanted to move to England and find production there. So I moved to England for a little stretch for like I was there 2 months back and forth for about like a couple years, sculpting, trying to find, we started from London and working up north towards the potteries and trying to find a place to start a factory and all this stuff. And I was sculpting in the B&Bs and the hotel rooms as we were working our way up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, all adventurous, but it was really odd and strange at the same time. But it got me sculpting, and I loved it. And fell apart with that. It was a bad thing at the end, but anyway.
So growing up, were you big into the superheroes and comic books and fantasy type things?
A little bit. I was actually, as a younger kid before all art school, for some reason, I was taking drawing classes from. My mom set me up with out of school drawing class with a guy called Al Wiseman. I don't know if you know that name. He drew Dennis the Menace comics for Hank Ketchum for a bunch of years. So he was, I don't know if you know Hank Ketchum too, or the Dennis the Menace cartoon that was in the newspapers. So this guy drew that, you know, comic for. He was his name's sort of honored after a while. He was teaching these little. Just drawing classes, you know, like cartoony type style. And so I took classes from him doing that. And that sort of opened my eyes to the comic industry and stuff. And then I think it was him, but I'm not sure. I started to be getting a subscription to Spider-Man that started to come to my house. And I don't know why, my name was on, like, wow, okay. And so I just remembered, I freaking wish I had these comics.
No kidding.
This was in the mid 70s. And it's like, I remember having a whole bunch of these, and then I wasn't really into reading them. I just loved the pictures, and I was drawing my own versions of these characters. Oh, I want to do I was kind of lame, where I tried to invent my own spider character guy, and I called him Black Widow. You know?
Yeah.
Patent that name.
Yeah.
You never know.
It could be big. That one could turn into something.
Anyway, so I kind of was into that, and again, I didn't read a lot. I didn't know the writers and all that stuff. I was just into the art and stuff mostly.
Okay, so I think that kind of leads us. Unless Charles, you have one more on this topic.
Well, I'm just kind of curious. How did you eventually make this move towards sculpting these characters? How did Bowen notice you? How did this meeting happen?
Randy lived down near I am, the Bay Area, for many years, and I met him through another friend. This is before Randy started working at Dark Horse, so he was kind of in my boat. We met. We were both doing our own little model kits. Where
right.
Sculpted this Conan years and years ago. Actually, a werewolf first, and then he on. So we would get together on weekends sometimes, just sculpt together. And he was working on his Predator kit that he first did, and a bunch of other stuff. So we knew each other early on, and you know, we hung out here and there, did a lot of art projects together. And then he moved to Oregon. Started working for Dark Horse, and then we lost touch for like 15, 20 years, I think, about 15 years. And then we kind of got reconnected. I realized he started, he was working for Dark Horse, wanted to get them to make their stuff, their characters into products like this, and they weren't really into that. They were just doing the comic books. And so he said, screw this, I'm gonna try to get a license for Marvel and do it myself. And I heard all this later, and he called me up, years later, and started, asked if I wanted to do some sculpts for him. I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. And I looked into him and like, holy crap, this guy's doing super well with this. So,
yeah.
And it was really a lot of fun and awesome. He threw a lot of work my way, and it got me out of the mainstream, the other carousel horses and stupid stuff. I was working for another company. I'm sorry, I keep calling
It's okay.
okay.
We know what
It's
you
okay.
mean. You know, there's work and
Really
there's passion at work, right? So, you know, we all get that. So,
Okay, so we'll move into the Bowen era of Mark Newman
yeah.
here. So Charles, I think you wanted to kick this one off.
Well, you know, there are a couple things I want to say. I know there's some people watching, and I just want to go through a short list of some of the stuff that you produced, sort of some of the stuff you sculpted. I'm sorry. And I think a lot of people are going to be amazed at how many of these statues they have displayed in their homes. So, like, for example, there is She-Hulk, Angel, Jean Grey, Medusa, Emma Frost, Spider-Woman, Elektra, Black Queen, Marvel Girl, Storm, Wolverine, Iceman, Black Bolt, Captain Britain, Power Man, Hercules. That's just the statues, right? And if we go into the busts area, we have Scorpion, Khazar, Polaris, Kang, Professor X, Baron Blood, Colossus, Phoenix, Havoc. I mean, I am sure that I've missed a few in there, you know, and I've owned a lot of these statues at one time. And, you know, in those days, when we first started getting statues, you didn't see the name on the box.
Yeah.
But eventually we started asking, you know, who is doing this? Like, who are the sculptors? Because they were starting to become like, you know, the John Romitas, the John Buscema's, the Jack Kirby's, the Todd McFarlane's. We wanted to know their names. And one thing that's very interesting, right, about you, and I wanted to bring this up on the show, is that, you know, before you came around, you know, it was basically Randy Bowen, William Peckett, Tim Bruckner in his own way, Sam Greenwell. These are all like kind of like industry pioneers. And they were doing great work, but until you came around, people were not sculpting women like that. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying like, you know, they were sexualized, but they looked feminine. And something changed in the industry when your work became part of the landscape. And then we started to see someone like Jim Maddox and Clay Moore. I know you know these names, right?
Absolutely.
Where there were people were asking, hey, is that the Dark Phoenix you just
Yeah,
showed?
it is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's from a review, I think 15 years ago. And, you know, it's the old point and shoot back in those days. Now, what's interesting about that Dark Phoenix, when it came out at the time, yes, people were amazed and they made like thousands of it. But all of a sudden, you know, values became an issue, right? People were now paying double the price of cover. And that wasn't the way the industry was. You know, things were kind of available for sometimes a year after it came out. But now statues were starting to sell out and people were paying more. And your stuff was among some of the most sought after stuff that Bowen was producing at the time.
Well, that's nice to hear. I mean, you know, Randy, Randy did all the sculpts and he was handling all of it. It's like, this is great. And he was, you know, producing big numbers of each piece. And then it started blossom and he couldn't handle all the work. So started to hire other people, and which was, of course, you had to do it, very smart. And started putting projects towards the strengths of the artist, you know. So I don't think I did a male figure for him for quite some time until, no, I guess I did. I was going back and forth because I guess Wolverine was one of the early ones. That might have been the first one.
I think it was the first one. And I think after that might have been Black Bolt. But one of the things that was interesting about this era of sculpting is that for the first time, fans were saying, oh, you know, we want a Medusa. You know, they should get Mark Newman to do that. Or we want a Tigra, or we want a Polaris. You know, they should get Mark Newman to do that. And that wasn't something that anyone was doing in 2003, right? And that is like, you know, my hat's off to you for playing such a big role in making the statues not only about the statues, but a celebration of the artist. Like, who is that guy that did that? We want to know who it is. And, you know, it was part of the sellability.
Well, I mean, years before, actually, I even started working for Randy. I was working on a line with one of the companies I did a lot of the, stupid stuff for.
It's okay.
We'll bleep that out.
Yeah.
But there was a company I was doing a lot of work with, doing all kinds of things. And then a friend of mine actually was a teacher that I had for like a techniques painting class at art school. His name was Thomas Blackshear. Amazing illustrator, amazing artist himself, and he's incredible. African-American guy. He lives in Atlanta at the time, but he moved out to San Francisco and taught at the Academy for Hallmark for years and all over the place. He approached me later for a concept of a line he was designing as a figurine line called Ebony Visions. And it was all African-American people, sculptures, and it was kind of an Art Nouveau theme to it. It wasn't like a historical representation of everything like that. But it was, they sold it to this company to produce, and he wanted me to sculpt it. And so I really learned my chops on sculpting these 6-scale figures, all very realistic in different ways, and doing a lot of the female figures. So it was just honing those skills of getting something so real and not comic booky, and doing all these things in different, there were some angelic pieces because he's very religious. There were some like angels and stuff, but a lot of it was most about family and love. And I don't know if you've seen a lot of that stuff online, but
I'll bring up some pictures here. Just hang on. I was going to show them later in the show, but we can show them now since you're talking about
it. All before Bowen, actually. So, and I was working for literally 18 years. It was a great arc of the success of this line, and I fortunately was able to work out a royalty deal. So it did pretty well.
Oh, I see.
That's awesome.
This was more of a historical thing about it. This is like in the 60s.
Now, people might not know that's the hustle, right?
It's called the bump. That's the bump.
Oh, the bump. Sorry.
That's when they're hitting hips. Yeah. And so, and that was later in the line. These were a little bit later. They're more contemporary looking, but there were ones that are a lot more, a little more fanciful, but still very realistic.
Wow.
So, here's one of the angels, I think, that you mentioned.
One was that one I loved doing, but it was a big pain in the ass with the wings because I worked on wings doing it more literally, and then he was saying, no, I want it more loose and more designy and stuff. So I had to redo the wings, and it brings
that was a pain, working traditional when you have to redo something. It's like 2 days of work.
A lot of the figurines are more like this, where there's just there's no point of reference of history and time. It was just its own little love, basically. And again, these are all 6-scale.
Mm-hmm.
This one is my favorite one that I saw that I could find a picture of. There's so much swagger in this guy's pose and the way the way he's looking and the hat. I love it.
He was very he would shoot models wearing a lot of the costuming, and he lived in Colorado Springs at the time, so he didn't have a lot of African American people to model for him.
Oh, that's amazing. So are you saying that this is kind of where you got your chops in female sculpts?
Yeah, because a lot of it was female, and again, very realistic. We were really into getting the mood and the faces and the softness and the fabrics.
That's
and all
beautiful.
That.
There's clearly a lot of natural talent here. I know you're getting your chops and all, but
No, but it was. I mean,
some things you can't teach.
Yeah, I was getting pretty good. And doing all this, it was, like I say, 18 years worth of working on this line, like probably 10 to 12 different sculpts a year.
Wow.
This is amazing.
Some had 3 or 4 figures, together, but.
So this is back in the 1990s?
Yeah, this is the 90s, like late 90s through early 2000s.
Wow.
Yeah, some of those are really, really good.
Yeah.
So what if someone wanted to find some of this stuff now? Where can they find it?
Well, it's all on the secondary market. You can just Google Ebony Visions or Thomas Blackshear Ebony Visions, because I never had to sign the piece. My name wasn't even on these because it was odd at that time. We thought, well, this is big collector base is African American people, and they didn't want, be it known, some white guy sculpting this stuff. And I was putting that out first, and they go, yeah, we should just, this is Thomas's line. He's designing it. He does really detailed drawings of what he wants as a key shot, and then he would shoot a model in full round, so I'd have the reference to go around, and we would forth and tighten it up and to get to the piece. So it was his line, and I have no problems at all with that. And so it's yeah, just, and again, it was successful for so long. It was really, really, I was very fortunate.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I was not aware of this part of your career, and clearly you loved it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
I mean, one of the art directors on the line, really, she was the main art director other than Thomas. There were times where she would just drive me crazy. Because again, I was the sculptures, you know, taking a photograph, going down the 1 hour photo, sending it to them. Like she'd come back. And then it got more advanced at the point where I would send her images, email images, and then she would blow this 6-scale face. She would blow up the computer screen and tear it apart. Like, well, that one eye should be a little bit lower than that one, and then maybe this nostril's a little too big compared to the other. I'm like, so I started sending her low-res images about the size she was. But that sort of attention to detail on her end just really brought these home, even though it was frustrating for me a lot, but it really dialed these things in. And when they mold and cast and paint them, we lost 20%.
So were you working on those at the same time that you were working on Bowen stuff?
At the tail end of the last 3 or 4 years doing Ebony Vision, a lot with Randy. And then I was seeing this, okay, I really want to get out of this because that art director was driving me nuts. It was just getting like burnout on it. I was getting really burnout. And so working with Randy and the comic book industry, and that all like started transition over to that. And I was very happy with that. So I was able to finally jump ship and say, well, it's not as popular anymore. My royalties are kind of dipping down into, you know, not much at all anymore. And so even though I wasn't making royalties on the other stuff, I just had to finally decide, okay, I'm done with this. I got to move on. And luckily I was already working with Randy, and soon after Sideshow opened up. And so I was good transition.
Are there, you know, as we go back into the Bowen, are there some pieces that you're most proud of? Pieces that, you know, wow, I really nailed this.
Yeah, I look at as horrible, like that one Wolverine. I see that now and go, oh my god.
Wow. We all have that. Yeah.
What I like the most is the pose and everything is the Scorpion, because that thing had just such a very cool pose, and I was really, yeah, I mean, just has such a really awesome view. Even when you spin it around, it had a really good view all around. And when you're designing a piece, you know, you have a key shot, but horrible and just 3/4 view. So you gotta push and pull it as much as you can to look good from every view.
That's the challenge, right? To sculpt a piece that has multiple display options.
Yeah,
not all statues do. That's right.
Yeah, but mostly they're, you know, on a shelf with a wall behind it. So, you know, you have a little leeway, but some people have the mirror behind it. And another, I'm trying to think of another. Oh, I really enjoy doing the Spider-Woman too, because I was able to just do a totally different kind of pose, more of a sort of Art Nouveau-y pose of her, like she was sitting on a gargoyle, like from, you know.
I love that statue. Yeah,
that was a lot.
Now you see, this is what I mean. Like at the time, you know, these things that we're talking about were just not done. Most of the time, people were stuck in that museum pose, right? Mm-hmm. You know, the Captain Morgan type of thing. And, you know, even women were kind of just standing there. But you wanted to do something more. You presented like the concept, one of the early concepts of the elaborate base. You know, let's have the flames. Let's have the, you know, the water bursting. You know, you tried to do something different.
A lot of that was Randy, because he would do a general sketch of what he was thinking of.
So that's this Spider-Woman here? This is the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
But on this one, he said, well, you do the pose and let me see what you come up with. I did a few drawings, and I just found this model online that was sort of posing like that, just a photograph. And I thought, that's really cool if I stuck her on this gargoyle. So I did all these drawings, and Randy said, well, let's do it. People might be freaked out by it or unsure about it. And a lot of people were at the beginning, but people warmed up to it. But Randy would also, would generally do it. Okay, here's a couple pose ideas, really rough sketches. I want this happening, that happening. He would let you go with that. And if you went too far out of his, what he was thinking, he would say, yeah, now let's go back to.
Let's bring you back.
Yeah, but sometimes, you know, he would say, "Yeah, that's great. Let's do that." So
So, of all the Bowen statues that you got the opportunity to work on, um, did you get to choose particular characters and say, "Hey, I want to, let me try my hand at at this character or this character"?
um, not really, because I never I wasn't such a huge comic book geek fan where I've always wanted to do a Hulk or always wanted it, which I've never sculpted a Hulk actually.
Oh, okay.
But
You
Just
did a
throwing it out there.
She-Hulk.
Yeah.
You did a She-Hulk though.
a
We'll
couple of
show
them.
that one in a bit. Yep.
So I never had a like, oh, I'd love to do that, but he would come up with a list like, well, we got to make these now. Which one would you like? And so I would look at the names. If I didn't know the name, I'd search it out online. Okay, yeah, because again, I'm like the guy who works in the industry who doesn't. It was not a super geek who knows everything about the
Captain Britain. Who is Captain Britain?
that was. I think it's obscure in itself, but for me, it was like. So.
Yeah, and Bowen, I mean, he dove deep into the Marvel universe. So, I mean, there's some characters there that I would have to Google, I'm sure, too. So,
Yeah, I think
I mean,
when his because again he was one of the first companies that was putting out a Marvel license, at least for 6 scale, and not the action figure stuff. And like I say, producing a whole bunch, like 1,500 or 3,000 of one character for a long time, and then they started breaking up the license, sending it to the companies, and he had to narrow the amount he would produce for a character. He had to broaden the character, scope of how many different characters he could bring in. So he's bringing in all the pure ones, and a lot of the collectors love that, So that was kind of the main reason, because doing Spider-Man 5 times over, the classic ones,
mhm.
to stretch that out and just produce less of something, but broader range of characters. He was adapting his company to do that. So.
Was there a character that you wanted to do that you didn't get a chance to do?
Well, I did kind of always want to do a Hulk. I don't know why. I always, I was stuck into the female thing for so long, which I didn't like at all. But to do a total, jacked out guy, I would almost sometimes, which you can't. The fans would not like it. I always thought it was too ridiculous, big, And so you try to add more muscle to something, and his limbs and feet and arms just wider and thicker. And I thought there's got to be a better way to make his feet not look so dumpy, but I never.
Well, the Hulk was something Randy really liked to do.
Oh, and he would take all the ones and nobody else could.
We're allowed to do. All right.
All right. So you want to move on to let's talk about a bit of shift in the collectible landscape, I guess, when Sideshow came around. Bowen, as you said, made a lot of the smaller scale stuff. Then in comes Sideshow, and they're making bigger stuff. And Charles, you want to kick this one off again?
This is a jump, right? We're now going from 6 scale to quarter scale.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to ask you what that transition was like. But before I do that, I just want to, let some of the people watching know some of the quarter scale pieces that you've done. Poison Ivy, Shock T, Catwoman, Storm, Batgirl, Power Girl, Jean Grey, Cyclops. How did that one get in there? And
just brand new.
That's right. And there's Grace from Image, Chitara, who I'm not sure. Is that a smaller scale one?
That's a not quite 6. I think it's 5th scale. It's a
5th scale. And then there's the Court of the Dead, right? And I'm going to hope I pronounce these names correctly, which is Siren, Shar, Kier, Galavarb, Gethsemane, Poxel. And what's interesting is that one of your Court of the Dead pieces was nominated in Spectrum, right? Siren?
Yeah, because I was Sideshow. I don't know if nobody was really submitting.
Hey, I recognize that picture. Sorry.
Sideshow wasn't. I don't know. I mean, the artists weren't really. A lot of them worked in house, so a lot of people weren't submitting that kind of work in Spectrum. Asked, can I submit this? And they go, yeah, for sure. So I had, they did, and, of course, tagged everything you know, their names and everything on, which was fine, and list all the people involved, because a lot of their projects, there's a concept designer who draws out and gets it okay before they even talk to a sculptor. So you know, I want to give everybody credit. You know, you can't give all the credit to a sculptor. You got to get the mold makers, the painters, the photographers, and all that stuff. But they, so I submitted it to something, yeah, and so it got, I guess, a silver recognition, or at least in the top, you know, that they picked in there for Siren, Galabar, and there was another one after that. Oh, then I submitted the second version of her a couple of years later, or maybe 3 years after that. So I did a few pieces I put in.
Like, look at that. Look at these pieces. These pieces don't look like anything else that you've done. You know, like these Court of the Dead pieces, it's more macabre, it's more horrific, yet beautiful.
Yeah, these were all basic concept, and everything was from Tom Gilliland, the creative director at Sideshows. He's, you know, partner. He's been there from the beginning, and he's been working on this in his back of his head for years, just wanting to put out their own IP and their own original line. So he had a lot of these concepts in his head, and he was hiring a bunch of artists to just start drawing this stuff out and doing it. So when they finally said, let's pull the trigger and make this stuff, put out a collectible figure or collectible sculpture that has no background of being a comic book or anything, and just stick it out there and try to get people interested. And it was a hard sell, because everyone wants to say, wow, that's awesome. What book is that from? What's the comic? I want to know more about this character. And they'd say, well, it's all original. You know, I remember the first splash of Court of the Dead at Comic-Con, I don't know, many years ago. And people were loving it, but confused, because they never saw any 2D art on this stuff, or there's no story. So then, and Tom had it all in his head. He was going to do all this different. So he's marketing this stuff kind of reverse the way it normally does, where, you know, you see it and you get into the characters, and then there's a sculpture years later, and now they buy it. So he's trying to sell, you know, and it started, so people loved it, and then they started reading about it, then they put out a comic book and more literature about it, and so it started building.
But it made sense that people would think that there's a background to this stuff, because these statues were so detailed. They kind of had stories within the sculpts,
yeah,
right?
It was so Tom was writing this down. It was all in his head. It wasn't just random characters. Now let's put it into a story. He had it all worked out, and was fleshing it out for years until we finally put out, you know, and I was thrilled to be working on original stuff, because doing more and more rehashes of the same old characters was fun in itself, of course, but there was no originality. You know, it's like, oh, another one.
Yeah, the creative juices need to flow.
You're gonna get people who love it and hate it. Love it because it's cool and different, but hate it because it doesn't have a Jim Lee look to it, or you know, all these different 2D artists work to it.
So what's it like, you know, for you? You know, you sculpt the thing. You've got Tom in the background going a little bit of this, a little bit more of that, and then you see the final product. Kat, I believe, painted most of these, right?
Yeah, she did a lot of the main. Yeah, most of the female characters, because she's amazing at the subtleties and paint that you can get on that. Tom actually did a bunch of painting too himself, because he's a model kit collector and did a lot of painting his own self. He's an amazing painter of figures. So he would finally get creative on doing that stuff, you know, be able to actually get into these things, and he would add to it and stuff. But Kat did most of the female characters, which those are the characters I did for the court.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through some of the pictures. They're so insanely detailed. As you said, it was sort of it was kind of a breath of fresh air for you to kind of just go wild with these costumes, like, because Spider-Man, there's only so much you could do, or whatever Marvel character it is, but with
like
these,
they would have really amazing, like Almikar Fong. I don't know if you know that guy's name. Almikar,
yeah,
He's Cuban, lives in Argentina. He was hired early on, like he was the key artist to do a lot of his concept. And he would come out for a couple months and work in house with Tom on, you know, fleshing out Tom's head and bringing it onto the paper page. And he, amazing artist, super detailed stuff. So he'd do all kinds of drawings of different characters and different positions and different, you know, elements of the costuming and the weaponry. and it's just built slowly into that to where they got a cohesive, character together. And then they would send it to an artist or have someone work on it from that point. Then other artists were involved doing design work for it. So it was very well thought out before it got to a sculptor. But we got a lot of freedom going detailed with this stuff, like the knife and stuff like that. There's some drawings, but it wasn't like blueprint drawings where you had to line up slightly and do this. They let you go free with that, and if you liked it, great. If not, change it a little. And this was all still traditional sculpture when I was working on this line.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
It looks like there's some cloth in some of these pieces too.
Yeah.
Fabric?
Media, she had, see, that's the sculpture when I finished it to send to them. And it was all in pieces. I mean, actually, it's not quite done. She still has her sculpture stand behind her, that pipe coming out of her. But all these parts have to come apart. So I had to key all these parts together. Her costuming comes off, that knife comes off the side of her neck. That's swirly, smoky thing broke into 3 or 4 pieces. That's still in process. So basically sculpting a 3-dimensional puzzle that would all key together. So it's easy to mold and cast, and then easier to paint in pieces and then assemble it.
Yeah, that's something that I always wonder about. So you sort of personally decide how these things break down for production, or do they do it further once they get all the pieces?
No,
a bit of both.
I have to design into it as I'm working, and we talk about, okay, that should break off, this should break here. So the paint, like if it's a glove that's on a hand, you want to make the seam line where the arm. So when you pull it off, you stick it on, you hide the seam. There's no seam literally there when they stick it together. So all that had to be thought out of where we're going to cut it. But then as you're working on it, it evolves like, well, that's not going to work because that leg has to come off further. So they mold it. There's not a lock in and there's not undercuts. And so that was a lot of the work was engineering.
Yeah.
So on this image here, you can see it looks like some of the under wire or whatever you call it. What's that made out of?
We use a aluminum armature wire. It's basically aluminum, and it's very flexible, bend and shape into what you need. There's different gauges from small wires for fingers and stuff to the up to the thicker wires for the body and the arms and stuff. And it's easy to cut. So when sculpting this stuff, it's all on Super Sculpey, which is a polymer clay that you could bake in your own oven or at low temperature, solidifies. Then you can cut the pieces off.
Wow. I remember when we saw, I remember when we saw this piece.
Yeah.
Wow. It was like, where did they
Actually,
even
that was
start to
one of
put
my
this
most
together?
Enjoyable ones to work on. That guy was creepy ass fun. It was a breath of air to get away from a female character.
So Gina, you have this one, right? Malvestros?
I do, yeah. This one's my favorite from the Court of the Dead.
Oh, wow, thanks.
Yeah, I love this one. I think one of the differences I found with this piece was, Court of the Dead's also been known for, they'll have this, elaborate mixed media fabrics with their statues, but this one, it was sort of an incorporation of the translucent resin with the polystone instead. So, but I thought it was, I thought it was beautiful, and I'm. The thing that gets me about Court of the Dead and that sort of attracts me to it is I would fully admit I'm not that into horror. That's not my genre, but there's something about the artistry of this line that's just beautiful. And so even for someone like me, that this is not my cup of tea, I find myself, and I'm guessing this perhaps was Sideshow and you as the artist, part of your objective is part of the artistry just captures you, whether you're into this type of genre or not. So this is my favorite from the Court. It's beautiful, and I love both portraits because I know it comes with the exclusive skull portrait, and I thought I was gonna like the exclusive portrait more, but then seeing this one in person, this one shown here on the screen, I actually prefer this one. It's the sculpt is incredible on that portrait, and the entire headpiece is beautiful. I haven't done a review on this one. I want to, but it's just there's so much detail in this.
I didn't sculpt the whole entire thing. I didn't do the scroll and the all the clear parts you see. That was all done by all actually digitally at that point.
Okay.
I had to fit that together. I knew what the pose was going to be and the flow, and I put it roughly in the sculpture with some armature wire to show the flow of it. But then when I finally saw the whole thing at Comic-Con together, I'm like, oh wow, that's what they did. Awesome. So, they work that way. A lot of artists, I mean, like I say, I didn't design most of this. I would design some of the smaller elements. Another artist did the bass, a good friend of mine.
Right.
Matt Bulliard did all the bass parts of that. And so there's like a bunch of people involved. And,
how do you find working like that in such a team collaborative environment? Sometimes artists have different visions. How do you find generally working in that type of situation?
Being used to commercial art and being told what to make, and this is the design, that's what you do. You just try to bring a little flair to it, but you can't go way outside the box where they're, not going to work with you again because you're not listening. So, when I don't know how they orchestrate it on their end, Sideshow's end, like, hey, you're gonna do this part, and then we'll have like Tim Hansen did a bunch. He's the guy who does a lot of the clothing work and the fabric work on all the sculptures. So there's some fabric work in this, and
look at that.
Later.
This
There's
line
so
just
many
strikes me
different
as
parts to this.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
It just looks like Sideshow and the whole team's just going completely all out on these statues, right? Like there's no reservations at all.
No,
They're just
and like you said earlier, I think Gina, you said about or I don't know who said about getting jealous of each other's art.
Right.
This is more of about I'm going to make mine even more on my part. So it's more of a, I guess, competition in a sense, just as a how can we bring all this together to be the best piece possible?
Right.
And you thought you spent a lot of time on it, looks awesome, and then it's like, well, it's not going to work because we're doing this, or maybe we'll do this differently, or you're kind of going, okay, wow, I liked it before, and then when it comes out, you're like, okay, that was a good decision. Because you can't.
See, hold on, just right here, just this one here. That's the first one that we saw.
Yeah, that's the first.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I remember the fan base reaction to it. I don't know, if you go on Facebook or the statue websites and so on, but this was the first one that we saw, and I remember the reaction was just wow. I mean, they didn't even care if it wasn't, Spider-Woman or Batgirl or whatever. They were just impressed with the artistry, and it says a lot about you that Sideshow chose you to launch this line of statues as like the first person, first artist attached.
I always did the females. Most of the stuff I did for them was female stuff. The very first sculpture I did was the She-Hulk for them. But anyway, so the first character, sex sells, so it's got to be a sexy character. You want to put it out there. If you put Poxel out first, it would be like, that is awesome. So smaller collector base, I would want that. You put a sexy woman out that has a lot of, into the dark art kind of realm or category.
Right.
It's gonna, there'll be a broader
Appeal.
I want to do this, and Shard, this one was she was like the real powerful character. I came in, brought in, and so she's a total badass. And there was like 3 or 4 iterations of her as she evolved, her character. So I think they only put out 3 so far. But
I think and so the second Shard, which you worked on as well, I believe, right? I think that one is shipping soon. Actually, I'm not sure if you know that.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't.
Yeah. So I actually have that. I have that on order.
So which one?
The one where she's wearing the Templar
That's the one
outfit.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
That's the first iteration of her technically, because she goes.
Oh, okay.
She looks
Right.
human here.
Yeah, she goes
Right.
from. I mean, this wasn't the first introduced; it was the other one, but this was before she got in the honor roll. She was just a really badass warrior type. And,
Yeah.
And
So this was actually shipping soon.
Okay, cool.
I can't wait to get this one.
Gosh, probably 5 years ago.
Wow.
More.
And Gina, I think you have this one too, right?
I have this one too.
Yeah.
And okay, I have to say, the whole sort of Egyptian mythos brought into this,
Yeah.
just genius.
Yeah.
It's genius. And
All Tom, Tom's head.
and then I think what sold me on it and just got me to click. I'm like, okay, this is unbelievable. Is the portrait and the mask, and you would hear, other collectors on Facebook groups and forums. It's always that portrait people are talking about with this particular statue. It's beautiful, and her pose, but and that, both portraits are unbelievable. The
Okay.
pose. So I have this statue. It's beautiful. Um,
That
it's
was
just so much detail to go into it. Yeah.
that was so
Hey,
much
there you
fun
go.
and frustrating to work on because working in symmetry, doing the leg armor on that because it's all kind of bones and it all put together. So you have to
Right.
the same pattern on both legs. So it was a lot of work going back and forth. And there's probably 33 pieces or so
Oh
that
wow.
all key into that. Tom Gileson, he's a concept artist who did a lot of the drawings and concept for, which was amazing work he did. And I did two portraits, but they ended up using her not her mask portrait. I did that one, but her real face.
Yes.
I-
Where
I'll-
it's sort of like mummified. Yeah.
So they changed it at the time. Oh, that's not the face I did, but so another artist did that one.
Okay. I like the mask one better.
So I
Yeah.
mean, that's a
It's beautiful.
fantastic line.
It's got her
Yeah.
beauty mask, like she's always disguised, and then of course So when Tom Gilliland was describing this character to me, he said, "Well, think of like a drowned corpse that they dug out of, brought out of the water. Her skin is real soggy and wrinkly, and she's the eater of flesh. So think of her like that. So her face got to be this, and I did something that didn't work out right. But then the beauty mask was supposed to be real pure and beautiful looking. And
Oh, it's unbelievable. And once again, you've got someone like me who's not into this genre at all getting these statues.
Yeah.
Like, and then Chris is like, Gina, and you have this one too. Like I'm not even. That's just like a testament to the artistry of it. Honestly, it's beautiful.
Possible yet? Because he's the most horrible.
Yeah, I flipped through him, the bird guy,
Oh,
or part
yeah.
bird or whatever he is.
Yeah, possibly.
They're all fantastic, and and you said it just kind of felt like they just said, "Oh, well, we want to start with a female, so we'll start with you," or were you involved in the sort of more creation side of like preliminary
The only one
designs?
actually did a lot of the design work was the first mermaid, the Galavar, the first one where she's in the water.
Okay.
Behind me somewhere. Right up here.
Yeah, with
Kind of cut off. I mean, it's not, you can't really see her.
yeah,
But-
I can bring it up.
So I was able to do drawings of her and the concepts. And I did a few drawings and the swirl and design. They really liked it. So we went from there. They had a couple other artists working on some early drawings a couple of years before we even started making the sculpt.
Now you see that piece. There's like nothing out there like that right now, and that's what's really most intriguing about this line is that there aren't the rules. Yeah, it's in the world of the macabre, the world of the horror, but you're not constrained by, well, if you're going to do Spider-Man, it's got to be red and blue, if you're going to do Hulk, he's got to be green or gray. And
Yeah.
you seem to have a lot more freedom. And like you said, you get to flex those creative muscles, those creative juices, and that's your breath right at this stage.
Yeah, and that was the best part about it. I mean, I love being, again, part of the original stuff and a part of the huge crew that worked on it. I mean, I was fortunate enough that put out the first few that came out, but then everybody was working on it simultaneously, and then the others came out, and to see like, oh wow, look at that one they did, and, so it was really, really.
Does that ever happen? You look at somebody else's work and go, oh man, I would have loved to have made that one.
Oh, I see people's work and say, and that always makes me want to up my game of, oh my God, look at that one.
I have that one too.
I'm just flipping through some of the more traditional characters now from Sideshow.
Yeah.
I was grabbing photos last night, and as I was doing it, Charles and I were kind of joking about this before you came on. Was I was like, oh crap, he did this one too. Like
Yeah.
your portfolio is just incredible.
I didn't
Like,
do the
It is.
base on Catwoman. I just did the figure on Catwoman there.
right.
I always got to give credit if I know the person or know who
Yeah.
I'm working. So,
And
and then,
You
Cyclops, I
did.
mean, just
hey,
came
this
out.
one, I gotta fess up. Daniel Bell's been working with Sideshow for many years now, or a few years
Yep.
now. And when I first met him at a Comic Con, I knew his work. He finally was brought out and came out. And super nice guy. Super. And his work is just. He's got what it takes to really push the pose and everything. And so I was working on this, and I was doing my own thing with the pose and stuff, and trying to get it right what they wanted. And Richard Long does a lot of the concept work for this, for the Marvel portion, and a lot of the work for Sideshow. So we were picking out the drawings and stuff. So I started working on it, and it wasn't quite jiving right. And so they asked, would it be cool if we let Daniel tweak, the early stages of this? And this was digital at the time. And so I no problem with that. With his own little edits, I were like, wow, okay, yeah, that's it. And then I was taking it further. So he really helped this pose and this whole thing come together a little bit more. And a little bit of me was like, man, how couldn't I not do that as well?
Do you think maybe that has something to do with this being men? Because men are, male sculpts, I'm just going to say as an in passing, male sculpts have ready for action right in your face. I dare you to punch me. Whereas women, when I'm looking at your women, they all have that delightful S to them, that S shape to their bodies. And but with guys, they've got to be in your face. They've got to be ready for action.
Yeah, and I see that, and the way he knows anatomy is so well for such a young guy. I mean, I say that because he's more amazing than I was at his age. I mean, he's just amazing. Anyway, so yeah, that because they don't have me do a lot of the guy stuff, so I do a lot of the female stuff, and I go, I guess, because I like the female form a whole lot more.
Me too. I'll agree with you.
But then when I talked to Daniel about, because we emailed back and forth, I just put it out there. Go, thanks for tweaking that for me, man. That was like you brought it to home, and now I can really work. And he goes, and he was like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're happy." I was kind of didn't really want to touch it because and he respects what I do, and he knows my work before he got in it. So he was really humbled and really glad that I was happy about it, because I wasn't, of course, not going to be that guy who gets all pissed off and annoyed, because it just makes it a better piece. It made me want to, just up my game again. So it was a really cool little collaboration, I think, on that piece.
That's great. You were saying that he's a young guy. I would imagine
he's
that he
7 or 38, right? I think.
He's younger than us. I'll say that. So, I would imagine that, when he was in his teens, in his early 20s, and he was looking around, what are people doing? And your stuff pops up. I would love to be doing what he is doing. Love to be in the industry that he is in. Because that's what people were looking at in South America. They were looking at the Bowen stuff, because Sideshow wasn't around yet.
Right.
So, you may not be aware, but your work turned out to be an inspiration for a lot of artists who are working today.
When I hear that's just gold for me. I just love that. It's like people were inspired by what I do, and now they do it, and it just made them want to be good and better. And I mean, that's better than any high-paying gig you'll ever get.
Well, it also made them believe that you could have a career at this.
Yeah, absolutely.
The poison ivy, beautiful.
Yeah, I have your shock tea as well.
Oh, cool.
And the amount of detail that you put on that portrait is unbelievable. Like sculpted details, and there's these painted dots on her, but they're not just painted; they're actually sculpted on there, and it's unbelievable. But do you ever find yourself sort of perusing eBay and seeing how much some of your work is going for? I mean, because I believe you worked on the She-Hulk premium
this one
format.
here
the first
goes
one.
for some big bucks.
First piece working with Sideshow.
I have this one too. And do you realize like how much your pieces are going for? Like you're
I don't. I sometimes would look, but how much is it for?
Do you have a guess? So first of all, the whole debate on this particular statue is this is what they would say is exclusive or fail. Everyone loves that parking meter. Everyone loves it. But I think at some point it was going for 2,000. It's
Wow, wow,
yeah, it's unbelievable.
wow. Thanks.
Yeah.
I used to get samples of a bunch of the stuff. I have that, and I broke the parking meter thing. So it's like,
Oh man.
You can fix it. You have the talent. I can just resculpt
Yeah.
it.
I didn't. If I had known that, I wouldn't have pushed the issue of.
No.
I didn't know that. I'm sorry,
But I
but that She-Hulk is beautiful.
well, thank you. It was a specific artist. I forget the artist who did the 2D art. It was a cover, and of course, she's a lot thinner than most of the She-Hulks they have done 2D art. So
But it's based on Diodato. That's what the character looked like.
that was the artist, and so
Yeah.
and that was it. So there was But you
So
then you
these,
see,
these unruly pieces. These are I think just up for pre-order now.
Yeah.
And again, as I was collecting the pictures last night, I was like, oh, he did these too, like because this is sort of a different style from your other Sideshow statues, especially I'd say opposite spectrum from Court of the Dead.
mm-hmm.
I think this line is called the Sleepover Sirens.
Yeah, and it was it's for they were doing a lot of the breaking into the vinyl toy kind of industry, the designer toy thing. So these were all vinyl casts, so there's a different production sort of process in this, and the style a lot more stylized. And so they got originally hired another artist. Shoot. I know his name, Cameron.
C.S. Davis. That's the name on the top there. Is that who did it?
Yeah, there was an artist involved doing originally, so but that's so I was working on his drawings, and they were kind of loose and stuff. So it was basically okay. And this is again digital, and so working on his stuff, it had to be that stylized. So it was in a totally different kind of realm than I'm used to. It was Cameron Scott Davis. Sorry, Cameron.
Yeah.
If you're,
Okay.
It's okay. You got it.
I had a bunch of times, and I go blank. Cameron's an awesome guy, great artist.
I'm sorry, just to quickly.
Go ahead.
That cartoony line is very different from Court of the Dead.
Yeah.
How do you make a shift like that? Like, I can't go to Metallica and say, "Can you write a song for Barbra Streisand?" You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
Illustrator and learned to draw and stuff, and I was always a cartoony style. I did a lot of cartoony, crazy character stuff on my own style. And then sculpting realism with the Ebony Visions line and going back and forth. So it's basically just, some artists have a style and that's what they do and that's all they do and that's all they want to do and that's great, that's fine. But if you're a commercial artist and you want to work as much as you can, you kind of have to, embrace these different styles and try to work in them. And it's like, let's say, so they brought this to me. I'm like, yeah, I'd love to do that because I used to do that kind of style, and it's a whole lot quicker. There's a lot less time involved instead of all the detail and stuff, and just to get a freshness look to it and stuff. But so you kind of have to be a chameleon in styles to work as in a broad range of different industries and different genres and stuff. So I always just took that as part of the job, and either if it's something that's really stupid stuff.
You make it sound like any artist can just shift the gear like that.
Well, I don't know about that. That's what I said. Some people have their own style and their own thing, and they can't go outside that box. And that again, that's great. But I love to be able to go back and forth and work on something, and now I can do this. Back to this, and if I have that luxury and those options, that makes my job so much more fresh and
fun.
Yeah, a lot more fun. Exactly.
Okay,
All
so
right.
before we move on from Sideshow, any last questions?
I think Gina had a last one.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I
go
was
ahead.
going to ask a question. Do you think that your experience in art school has helped you in terms of being able to jump from genre to genre? Did anything that you've sort of gained from art school maybe helped with that?
I thought it was seeing students and their styles and what to it, and it's like, wow, that's cool. I love that. Maybe I should. And you, at that point, you're experimenting all the time because you got to, instead of trying to, okay, this is all I like to do is portraits, realistic portraits. You go there and so that helped a lot. Just like I say, seeing everyone's work and you want to try that, and you can try it. Oh, this is horrible, miserable. I don't like it. I'm never going to go there again. Or you maybe revisit that style later in your career. But that opened up a lot, especially with at that time is limited about the kind of jobs you get. Like for video game companies now, they were never around really in that level of detail when I was in art school. But that brought on all kinds of cool stuff. So just being exposed of different art and different styles just really lights a fire under my butt. So try to do different and make it more interesting for myself.
All right, so we're going to move on. Next topic here. So we've kind of touched on it a few times already throughout the show, is the transition to digital sculpture from more traditional. A lot of the artists that we've talked to previously on the show started with digital. That's all they know, and got their start in the gaming industry that you just mentioned, where you had to make that transition partway through your career. I mean, was part of you sort of resistant to that, or were you sort of, hey, let's do it, like with when ZBrush came around?
That was just resistant.
I lost his audio.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay, we lost you there for a few seconds. If you can say that again.
I was saying at first I was resistant to it, just because it was still early and like, wow, that's cool what they can do, but I don't want to work on a computer and do what I do. I like moving around the piece, throwing shit around, getting dirty, and using all kinds of materials. But as it got more prevalent and stuff, I knew I had to. If this was where it's going, 3D printing is getting better. If I don't, I'm going to be left behind, and there won't be a lot. So, I finally, actually, what pushed me into really doing it, and I was so thankful for that, is Paul Gabery, who's one of the guys who designed ZBrush. He works for Pixlogic for many years. He helped bring it to life. And a good friend of mine, Andrew Kors, who used to work there and do stuff, they invited me and like Randy Bowen and Steve Wang and Damon Bard, Brian Wade, a bunch of guys who still work traditionally in either the special effects industry or statue stuff, come out to LA for a weekend and at the Newman workshop and just sit in front of the computers, and we're going to show you what ZBrush can do. So 2 days, like Saturday and Sunday, and we were all fumbling through. Some guys already knew a little bit about it, but I opened my eyes. Okay, now I'm finally in front of this, and I was like, I was still trying to learn to draw with a stylus and a pad, so you're not looking at the screen. And, you're drawing. You're not connected, because I didn't have a Cintiq, which I have now anyway. So I was learning just the fundamental stuff, and it was like, this is cool. This could be amazing. The frustration right now is insane. I don't know if I can get past it, but so those 2 days were, okay, you learn this stuff, very simple. Here's the interface. Here's where they belong. Start with these few tools, and when you go home, and they gave us a program for free, a test program. It's like, okay, this was awesome. So they said, go and start using it. Start working on it. Don't let a couple days go by, because you're going to forget everything. There's a lot of stuff you just learn, and then you'll just fall away from it. So I did that, and then just kept getting more comfortable with it and looking online for tutorials, because I hate reading manuals. I don't know how to learn that way. So just learning the vast tutorials that people put out, free tutorials online on YouTube and stuff, just helped you with everything. And so I started to get involved and started to realize, I love this. Then you get fucking hate this. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's like, so it was a love-hate thing for so long. But I just knew the capabilities and how you can do stuff a lot quicker. I need that head 10% smaller. It's like a click of the button rather than resculpting the whole face and head again. So there was all these things that I knew were advantages, and I knew friends that are already flying with it. So yeah, I had to.
It was time.
So
And Oh, I can't imagine going back and all clay, cutting it up, making the keys and joints and all the materials. I really, now it's like, holy crap, I would never. I mean, and at least the collectible stuff. I still like to do my own fine art clay sculpture, and that's a whole different kind of thing.
You know what's interesting is that we interview some younger artists, and those younger artists have no traditional background whatsoever, like nothing.
Yeah.
And a lot of these artists that we interview also come from the gaming world, and they didn't really grow up loving comic books, right? I mean, they liked watching the X-Men cartoon. I'm not taking away superheroes from them, but it wasn't their passion. Their passion was gaming. And but if you understand the program, if you understand ZBrush, if you know how to sculpt that way,
Yeah.
it's a skill that you could bring to other areas in art.
Absolutely. And I'm touching on that about digital artists who've never touched clay. I also do a lot of work with the friend I mentioned who helped design zebras, Andrew Corse. He's a guy who worked at ILM for years as the senior character designer and project guy, a supervisor for a lot of the films. Then he started his own fine art. He wanted to go all fine art, and he put out the accrochets, the models of I'll grab them quick. These that reference that artists always have.
Oh, okay.
And his company's called Anatomy Tools. I'm sure a lot of the artists, most artists now have these as a reference. He put out these amazing anatomy references. It was all digital in ZBrush, but then he started his own sculpting, anatomy sculpting for artists workshops. And so he asked me if I wanted to come and help teach that. So I was teaching this with him at a level, and a lot of these digital artists would come in just to take these courses to learn anatomy better, and they've never touched clay. And you look at their work, and it's amazing, digitally, and it's like, wow, it's awesome work. And they touch clay, and they're like, oh no, I don't know what to do, and it looks like they never even looked at a human being before to make arms, because they didn't know the materials, so they never started traditionally. And to go backwards for them was super hard and struggle. And a lot of them left frustrated. Some wanted to keep learning that because you just build up more knowledge. But the people that start traditionally in clay, going into traditional or going into digital, with ZBrush especially, the interface is it's really well designed to feel as close as you can to be working with clay in a computer. So those kind of people like myself learned and jumped a lot quicker that you can digitally than a digital artist trying to learn clay and just like, oh, why am I doing this? I'm just going back to digital.
Well, maybe they're used to something faster.
Don't need to know that for their.
So you posted this image here on your Facebook page not too long ago.
Oh yeah.
And said, these are all statues that you worked on, and can you spot which ones were digital and which ones weren't? And I mean, I know Jean Grey is because I had seen the renders, but the rest of them, you wouldn't be able to tell.
Well, yeah, only the people that know like when they came out, kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess the age of the statue might give it away, but
yeah, but
She-Hulk is traditional.
Yeah, there's 3 that are digital. And
Scarlet Witch
is what?
Scarlet Witch is traditional.
Yeah.
And She-Hulk.
Right.
And maybe Chitara.
So there's 3 digital and the rest are traditional. So Chitara's digital.
All right.
Jean Grey's digital. And I think it was, can you guess, Charles or Gina? Do you know which the third one is?
Maybe no, it's not Shard. It's don't know the name of the one on the blue one at the bottom left.
That's
Grace.
Grace.
Yeah.
Is she
That's the other.
digital?
Yeah. So there's Jean Grey, Chitara, and then Grace. Those are the digital ones.
Yeah, but I think the point I'm trying to make here is, I mean, you have like a digital level of accuracy, I guess, is the best I can put it in a traditional way. You can't tell any difference between them.
Well, if you look
Your work
really,
translated perfectly.
you know what? What's interesting as well, though, compared to digital working, an artist working digitally and an artist doing traditional originally, as traditional sculpture, an artist can have a little more of their own style that shows through just by their hand touching the actual material. And their own, a lot of times we make our own tools, create what we want, and texture pads and stuff to make things. And when you're working digitally, I found out, everybody has the same exact tool range. You can get textures and apply it to it, and the way you work, geometry, and just do all this stuff to it, where a style can be lost. I mean, you can put up all these different sculptures from different artists, except Daniel Bell. He's got this flair. He always kept it. It's just, I mean, digitally, it's a little harder to tell an artist's style unless you're really, unless you're into a totally stylized, your own specific look on a character, and how you like more of the stylized stuff than the realistic stylized stuff. So anyway, it's a thing that kind of blends down and then makes artists more, I don't know, sort of the same-ish. I don't mean to sound.
So, is there? I don't know if resentment is the right word, but do you look at these younger guys coming up and they only know only know digital, and you think, man, like I was doing way harder stuff than this in my day, type thing. Like,
these gray hairs on my head are from all that.
Is there any of that, or is it just, hey, it's a different time now?
Well, a lot of it, you'd say it's a different time, and some you think, okay, yeah, we cut our teeth doing it this way, and now we learn this way and stuff. So it's like, you don't know how easy you kids have it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's easy. It's just, I mean, like I say, if a guy goes into clay and tries it and just can't even, because he doesn't know the material, he, it's a different medium and a different process. It's just they'll have to spend a lot of time to learn it. So I had to spend a lot of time to learn digital and stuff. But just the way you can take assets from an actual sculpture you did a while back. I need a fist for this sculpture, and oh God, I'll just use the one I did 2 years ago and just repose it slightly, and now I got another fist, and I didn't spend 5 times as long or longer to make this thing from original. So you can do that a lot and interchange your own assets. I don't recommend that. I don't say go online and find I'll use this bust that it's a free mesh, and then you just tweak it a little and call it your own. That's a bit cheating in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Easier to cheat digitally.
So I'm just going to show some of these are digital sculptures you did, kind of original things. We got this gator hound. I think this was printed out by Ed Bradley.
Yeah, he printed it for me.
Yeah.
Good guy, really good guy.
Wow.
So again, he
started getting into printing and stuff.
Yeah, he's a painter. I know Ed a little bit, and I met him last year in person finally at Comic-Con.
Oh, cool.
I think I was with you when you did that.
No, this is in San Diego.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This one here. So this, again, you're doing sort of the engineering, the keying, deciding how to break it down. Is that just kind of part of the job, or is this part of the... I imagine, I'm kind of picturing in my head, this would be my least fun part of the whole thing.
You're picturing correctly.
Yeah, okay. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, now I'll break it down type thing.
Yeah, it's the necessary, and then you gotta really kind of work with that in mind, how you're gonna break it down, because you're not gonna usually you don't make a whole sculpted piece and then break it down. Some people do. I kind of, you keep parts separate, and then you're gonna make it into a part later, but back and forth. But yeah, because that's the last, okay, this has to come apart to paint and make, mold it and cast it. So it's more of the technical part that it's just have to do. I'd rather not, but you have to.
So here's another one, this werewolf that you've been working on, which looks incredible as well. And some of these original things are again, kind of completely out of your typical female sculptures. Is it kind of like you said, refreshing to work on something like this, like a snarling werewolf?
Yeah, I was always like not my very first model kit I put out, but it was a werewolf called Moonsinger, and it was it was kind of a big sculpture. I did it like in '91, and it was all clay, super sculpty. And then I cut up and engineered it. But then I sent it. A friend of mine knew some people in Hong Kong that could produce this stuff as just a resin kit you can buy and paint. So I had them done, and then I sold a whole bunch of them. Slowly sold a bunch, and became sort of a grail piece for the garage kit industry. So I was always into monsters and stuff like that. And so now I just wanted to redesign, put out another werewolf that would sort of.
So this is the son of Moonsinger. That's where that name comes from.
I started one before this that was more Moonsinger. Moonsinger wasn't as lanky and stylized, and I called that one Son of Moonsinger.
Oh, okay.
And it's not done, but I started this one. I just like the flair of it a lot more. Excuse me. So
I love the teeth. The teeth look awesome. Let's zoom in on those.
Exaggerated a bunch. So I don't technically call this one Son of Moonsinger because it's not close to the first one. And
okay.
But I don't know my name for it, and that's not quite the finished one. The base is a lot more elaborate, but I mean the lower base. But
yeah, these are different times of development here that I'm showing.
Yeah, just that circle on the bottom is just a basic primitive shape there, but
yeah.
So that's the arm of the Son of Moon.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know if you have a picture of it. It was not even done yet, but it was more.
No, I don't.
It's more human looking. At his stumpier face, and he had kind of like the long hair that kind of comes over like. Kind of half human-ish.
Okay, so digital sculpting, as you said, is just kind of started out as a necessary evil, and then yeah. So we'll talk about we'll move on. We'll talk about some of your personal favorite projects, and me as more of a comic book style collector. I had no idea that these things existed and that you had worked on them. And I think probably some other people are in the same boat. So I will show these ones here. This is at Stanford University.
Yeah, these were a friend of mine knew this guy who's a big benefactor there. He's a developer, built a lot of buildings for Stanford University, total sports guy, tons of money. He wanted these full-on bronze figures to be sprinkled around a couple of the sports buildings he had. And so these are a little bit smaller. I did another batch that are bigger. These are almost about third life size, and they're all bronze, full figures that are mounted to these bronze backgrounds. So I was able to get this. So these were I sculpted here in my studio. That's now I could not fit that in here to work in. It's too cluttered, but.
Mm-hmm.
And that was more of the fine art stuff I love. It's just, if you look closer, the textures.
So these ones are bronze, and I noticed a lot of or at least the ones I found, were of your fine art, personal project type things, are bronze.
Yeah.
So does the final medium change how you work?
It does. I mean, these are produced in a lot different way. Because when you would I would just deliver the sculpture. That's the sculpture part of it. That's the clay still on that one. Mm-hmm. I would deliver that to the foundry, and they would do all the process. So I wouldn't have to cut this up because they would do a whole different sort of cutting and keying for bronze work, because they have to cut apart and cast it in separately in bronze. Then they have to weld it together, so you wouldn't cut apart where the arm goes into the sleeve, where you hide the seam. There wouldn't be a key in there. They would just have to cut it to where the highest points, like maybe along that deltoid or the bicep down, and cut the arm out. So they can weld and then grind away the weld and hide all that. And it's a different process where they would make a mold in different parts, they would have to do a ceramic, what's it called? Just a regular rubber mold around it, mother mold. So they would cast each piece in wax. Then they screw it up, which is adding different channels. Or when you're casting it, you pour in the stuff and it all comes out these channels and cut it off. They'd have to do all that, cast these in wax, dip this wax into a ceramic shell, which is dipped in, and built up a ceramic shell around it. They fire that in a kiln. It burns out all the wax. Then they set that up to pour in the molten bronze into it. It goes out everywhere. Then they sandblast that mold off, and then cut off the sprues, which were the extra parts, and then weld it together and finish it all up, hopefully matching the artist's tool marks and everything that they put on the sculpture.
Jeez.
And if they want another one, they got to do another wax pour, take that wax, dip it in ceramic a bunch of times, put it into a kiln, fire it out. So, the whole process
Holy.
takes a long time, and that hasn't changed for, a couple centuries.
Yeah.
But although now they bring in digital where you can bring in a maquette, I would probably do a smaller version of those now, print it at whatever size, and then do all that old school molding and casting. But so they did bring the technology into part of it, but this gets complicated and expensive with bronze.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So here's another one of yours that you mentioned you did. This is a fireplace facade for George Lucas.
Wow.
This was it's actually this one is in their main house called main house at Lucas Ranch, where they do a lot of it. Now it's mostly sound editing and stuff, but they used to do a lot of the movies. And so I was approached by their team to see if I wanted to do this, and I was at the same time, and I was really intimidated for what, because I didn't do a lot of bas relief, and it had to be very specific Art Nouveau style, because George Lucas is totally into Art Nouveau and this stuff, and it had to fit really specifically into that fireplace mantle. And that was the shrinkage rate of a clay sculpt to a bronze casting is almost like, what's it, about 8% or something? It's a lot. So I had to kind of make it bigger, and then hopefully it would shrink down into what the size was.
Yeah.
Wow. What an odd commission.
Yeah, it was well, I would love it because it's freaking for George Lucas and everything, and but I might have to turn it down because I'm on this other stuff now. And they said, no rush. We'd like you to take it. We used another artist. It didn't work out. He didn't get the subtleties and the curves and all this stuff. Because they had one of his concept designers, Eric Tiemens, who used to work there, do a lot of the concept work for the older films, the Star Warses and Indiana Jones and stuff. He did all this research and drawings and specific heights of the the depth of the relief on this stuff, and so it's that's what was so intimidating about it. So
did you give it to him personally?
Yeah, so I actually I had to bring this in at stages. I did it sculpted like, I don't know if you showed the clay sculpture you did.
I think so. I can go back here.
Bought a big flat, so it was a big flat of plywood. Then I had to build a box around it and bring that sculpture on site so George can walk through and look at it and make notes if you wanted to or not. And then I brought it back and then finish it off and then bring it to the foundry. So it was all this but it was so cool to go there and talk.
Wow.
I bet.
We had to bring a guy, work the foundry to actually grind some of the edges. So it actually, it doesn't quite fit. We'd have to bring it out down the driveway. They didn't want us to grind it out front. Grind a little away, bring it back, and it finally fit in after a couple grinds, which wasn't too bad.
Wow.
So
I did one for his bedroom, which is a whole different design. And it was into a fireplace that was actually in his bedroom at his house. And that was real surreal. Basically.
You have pictures of that?
I
don't have one, no.
And it's basically just a simpler design, but the fact that I had to bring it to his house, bring it upstairs, with a couple people, sit it in front of his fireplace at like 8 o'clock in the morning one morning, and he comes walking in with his coffee cup and makes notes. He said, I'm in George Lucas's bedroom.
It is so cool.
And walking through and seeing all this original art he has. He's got like original Norman Rockwell and Barry Cassatt, this turn of the century impressionistic painter, and Maxfield Parrish. All these original art throughout his house. It's just impeccable.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Something interesting about George Lucas that a lot of people might not know, that he gets a lot of first cracks at original artwork that use Star Wars. So, you know Adi Granoff? Does that say anything to you, that name?
No, no.
He's a comic book artist. He's well known in that area. He helped design the Iron Man costume, the
Oh,
Iron
wow.
Man armor for the first movie. Anyway, so here he is drawing Star Wars covers, and he finds out that George Lucas gets first crack, and he goes, ah, "Okay, whatever. You know, who's gonna want this?" And then he finds out that he did want it, and he wanted the next one, and he wanted the next. And so,
Wow.
it's really cool that when artists meet him, it's kind of surreal. They all kind of have the same type of experience.
Yeah,
They're like, "Ugh."
he's very quiet. He's kind of shy, and he'll come in and he kind of won't look at you in the eye at times. But you know, talk to his people, and then they, oh, well, I can talk. They can say something because I mean, I heard people that worked for him a lot. They say start a job at wherever. They tell you don't come up and approach him and tell him you're a big fan. I love all this stuff. You just don't do that. That's not cool. So
It's not cool to do that. Okay.
Well, a lot of
never-
artists
Yeah,
actually
take
never
note.
gonna
like
do
That's
that.
important to know for when I meet him.
Yeah,
No,
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 when I
Josh-
don't meet him. I'm never gonna meet him.
just turn away.
You
So,
just go
do-
up to him, say, "I hate your work."
Do you have any idea how do they come up with you? Like, did you know a guy or that worked there, or did they see your work and say, "We want that guy to do it"?
Well, first guy they used worked at the foundry where these are made, and I don't know if he put my name out there because they said it wasn't quite right. They cast it in bronze and everything. It just wasn't really working out for them. They wanted a lot more subtleties. So they might, I think they, I don't know if Tom gave, because I know Tom well, if he gave my name or just the guy who designed Eric Tiemans. I don't know if he knew my work because I got called by another guy who wouldn't know me. He was in charge of a lot of the, he's an architect and worked on a lot of projects for the ranch and stuff and doing specific, architectural drawings for projects. And he's the one who contacted me. And so they just said, "Oh, we got your email from somebody. And we looked up and you look like you could do this." And again, they took it already to a point where, oh, we got to find somebody. And so when I said I couldn't do it, they're like, no, there's no rush. We really want you on it. I'm like, I can't turn this down because that would be the most.
No.
Right.
No.
I had to take.
Yeah, and you got to go to Skywalker Ranch.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there a few times. My friends used to work there, but this was cool to be there. This is going to be here.
Well, invited, like personally invited. Is
Right.
different.
Wow.
Below a Maxwell Paris painting and next to a Norman Rockwell painting. It's going to be there. So.
That's amazing.
All
So
right.
I have to show this piece as well. This is one of my favorite of your works, the Eel Walker.
Yeah.
Talk about it. Like, how did you come up with? I'm gonna do this beautiful woman. I'm gonna make her walking this gigantic, ugly sea snake type thing. What was the inspiration here?
Well, I'm very into Art Nouveau. I love the style of art and stuff. So I'm always looking at old sculptors from the turn of the century that did a lot of this kind of work. And this one guy, Edward McCartan, he's done a lot of, pretty famous stuff. There's one called, I think, Diane, and it's this nude female walking, like holding a leash and walking, I think it was a greyhound dog. And it's kind of leaping up forward, and she's leaning back with this total grace. And this thing is kind of on her side, just leaping out, not leaping, but kind of lunging forward. And I just love that whole design. I thought I just kind of like that idea, that concept. So I started just sculpting the female figure in this, very curvaceous yet very rigid the way she's designed. And I wanted her to be having something, and I just thought, I don't know why I thought of an eel, just something big that's floating, and right, and the whole concept of just the way it's designed with the her vertical and the horizontal of the eel, and again, female figure, but her arms are kind of rigid and stern, and then this just ribbon of a eel flowing by her side, and kind of wrapping around her, and just the fact that she's touching the back of her hand on the fin of the eel's back. I just kind of came good. I had to do them in like 2 or 3 pieces, sculpt this thing, and then put it together as I'm working on it to see how they fit. And it's hard to see. I don't think I have a top view, but it really, you look down, it's just totally another cool view where she's getting. And then it sat here for a long time, like in process, like a lot of my stuff does, my own stuff. And I was talking to a guy he came in, he's looking at my stuff, a friend who does a lot of carpentry work. And he was totally amazed by this thing. He goes, "Oh man, that is beautiful. What are you gonna do?" They go, "Oh, I wanted to do it in a bronze, but you know, I gotta find the time and the money." And we needed some cabinet work done. So he he said, "I'll do all this cabinet work in your bedroom. We want all this stuff done." He goes, if we can trade and get that." I'm like, "Wow, that's a good deal." So they lit the fire in my butt to get it done. So I finally finished it off and had it cast. And he got the first one. And so he's the one that got me to actually push it and financially be able to make this thing.
Oh wow.
And then it just, so I decided to make 20 of them, you know, not all at once. I can't afford to have them cast because that thing cost me $3,000 to have it cast.
So how big is that statue? I don't think I've ever seen it like with a scale reference.
I don't even have my own copy here anymore, or I sold that one. But anyway, the eel is 28 inches long, and she's about 19 inches tall. So,
okay, so around a 1/4 scale style or size person.
Yeah, maybe a little bigger. Yeah, I guess not one. But
a little bit bigger. A tall one.
Yeah. How tall did you say it was?
Yeah, 18 is about 1/4. You're right.
Yeah, that does sound like 1/4. You know, I've seen images of that for some time. Like this has been around for what, like 15, 20 years?
Yeah, and it got a gold medal award for dimensional sculpture in one of the Spectrum books.
Right. That's, I think we're, okay.
And so, and then I decided I'll make only 20 because bronzes, you have to have an edition size and to charge the money you want. And so I did 20, and then throughout the years, I had tons of people asking about it, and you tell them the price and crickets for most of them. Because, oh, can I get a resin copy and paint it myself? I go, no, this isn't the thing. And so finally, eventually, actually, most people that bought these were from different countries. I mean, there's in Spain, there's Texas. That's not a different country. I mean, there's
some people might think so.
No, many countries. There's like, what was it? Australia, a guy bought one, and Portugal, and so people would ask, you tell them the price, and I'd have to say you have to give me 50% up front, and then I cast it, and then 6-8 weeks later, pay me the balance, and I'll send it to you. So there's a lot of trust involved in that, and they sold all 20. So
that's amazing. No, I've seen that years ago. I've seen photos of that. It would pop up on forums and statue Facebook groups, or people would post, "Hey, if you really want to see what real art is, this is real art." No, I'm not joking. It's like forget about people go, "Yeah, this is real." Yeah.
This one here, I don't know if this is one of your favorites as well. I just liked it, so I wanted to show it. The snake charmer.
Yeah, that was more of a recent one. I got that one behind me. I just called it Snake Charmer. People call it Lilith, the snake woman thing, and I should have called it. I made this because the eel walker was really cool, and I wanted to design something else that sort of that same vein of female and animal or something. But a first concept I have, which still I want to do, but it just sounds daunting, is a nude female dancing with an octopus. So the octopus flowing around her in some awesome nouveau-y style, yet I keep thinking octopus have 8 tentacles. If I do all those, or encompass maybe 5 of them into a flow, and then a couple swing. So I'm still toying with that what the design. I think that would be really.
I'm sure that's going to come out great.
And it would be like the eel walker was so successful, and so people like that whole flowy thing.
In this photo here, it's like 3 different stages. So is that the clay on the left?
Exactly. And then that's the raw bronze casting that's welded together afterwards.
In the middle?
One is called a patina, where they add a flame, you fire it up with a torch, and then you start spraying chemicals onto it, spray bottle, and it gets different colors going, and depending, there's a lot of ways to add patina. So it's just basically painting it the way you would do a bronze. So you can't scratch it off or anything. It's just heat infused onto the metal. It's called a patina, and then it's mounted.
Does that mean that each edition would be slightly different because the way it is?
Yeah, 'cause when they cast each, it's in pieces, not that many, but it's a few pieces. And so every time they have to put it together and weld it, there's going to be differences involved, and the 15 is
Right.
different. I mean, I always say I want this one, and I'm usually there to help them because I live pretty near the foundry. And I said,
So,
like,
and this is how it started out.
yeah, I actually involved with this group of friends. I live right near Pixar Studios as well. And
Okay.
they let us use one of their big art rooms where we just go after hours at 7 o'clock, usually on Thursdays, not anymore since all this crap, the pandemic. But we just meet with a bunch of friends, hire a model for 3-hour sessions for 6 sessions usually with a model. And it was one of the results of taking one, and I've got tons of these all in clay around here that I haven't done anything with. And this one I finally took to a stage to do a bronze with. So, and because she was modeling with a snake, of course, but
Yeah. All right. So some amazing original stuff, like just totally unique. What what you like best is those original personal style projects, or?
yeah, it gets me still working in clay, and it's again working in clay for the collectibles. I use a polymer clay. It's a whole different material, and it's not as doesn't feel like real art in a sense where you can get loose and use textures, and you have to refine everything to be painted to look like something else. So this, gets me still to feel like I've always wanted to be a fine artist, self-supportive fine artist, but it's a lot of work, of course. Well, everything is, but I just never focused on that completely, because I still enjoy doing all this other stuff a lot, and it's what I do, and it keeps me busy. But I love to be able to go back and just, okay, I want to spend time on this. They usually linger quite a while until I get something done, maybe, or if it's a commission like the Stanford stuff or the Lucas stuff, which doesn't happen that often, then I'll embrace that and take the time to do that. But just glad I can go back and forth. I couldn't work on a computer the rest of my life only.
No.
All right. I think we've taken up quite a bit of your time tonight, so I think we'll kind of move on and start to wrap things up here. Charles, you wanted to kick this one off?
Well, let me try that again. What's going on with you in the future? Like anything that you could tell us that you're up to with Sideshow or personal projects that's coming up?
Not a ton. I mean, I pretty exclusively for many years, and then a lot of things changed in the last few years. So I'm not working a whole lot with them these days. There's a couple pieces that are probably going to be announced when they do their virtual con coming up. That a while back, and they're finally coming out. And I'm working on 2 pieces now with them, which is cool. There was a stretch where it wasn't anything for quite a while, but I've been working with other companies. Nothing big, no big plans. The werewolf I want to put out, I'm doing my own Frankenstein version of Frankenstein that I've been working on in that realm.
Great. How are we gonna learn about this?
Well, I don't have my own website, which is lame, I know, but I put it on just social media and post when I'm coming out with something. That I was gonna do as a model kit, which isn't like, wow, I make tons of money on that. It's just more fun. But I also want to produce some of these at a larger scale, like even a 3rd scale, and get them all full-on painted pieces that I can put out the door and maybe make a nickel on or something. But
sure. Well, when the time comes, let us know. We'd love to talk about it and show people some of these pictures, because if you don't have a website or don't have you're not working with one of the licensed companies to produce this stuff, we'd love to be able to promote it with you.
Yeah, thank you. I might be doing some stuff with Tweeterhead, but I'm not sure about that yet. I don't know if you know them.
Oh yeah, we do. We love their stuff. So Gina, anything last?
Just one last thing. Sorry, they breathed back. They put breath back into the 6th scale line. Tweeterhead practically all by themselves.
Yeah.
I do want to say one last thing, because we're wrapping it up now, Chris. Basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to say one last thing. Throughout the show, we've been posting a lot of pictures, and the non-stock photos were pictures from my collection over the years.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take a moment and say thank you very much because for making my home so beautiful over the last 20 years.
Wow.
It's been a privilege to have this displayed in our home.
Well, I'm humbled to hear that. I love that, hearing people that are inspired and want to put that stuff around their house and like to look at it every day. I mean, thank you for saying that. I mean, I would
Thank you.
doing it for collectors that love the stuff. So thank you guys.
Yeah. So Gina, anything last before we sign off here?
I'll just end with thanking you once again for sharing your time with us and sharing your knowledge and your expertise in this industry. And I look forward to what you put out in the future. And to end, I'll just say that for the collectors out there who are is quite aware of your career and of your pieces, no matter how many statues each of us know that you've produced, there's always a few of those great pieces out there that we didn't even realize, oh my God, you did that as well. There's always, no matter how many, no matter how much we know about your career, there's always going to be that few pieces that we didn't even realize that you had a hand in and that you did it. So I didn't know that you did Shock T. I mean, that's
Oh, yeah.
unbelievable. So
Yeah,
thank
that's
you.
one of the very few Star Wars ones I've done. So.
Yeah, I just want to again thank you very much for your time. I know we've taken up a lot of your Saturday
you,
night here.
I appreciate putting me on your show.
Yeah, I mean,
It's our pleasure.
putting it together last night, I got almost overwhelmed with the amount of amazing things that you've worked on over the years. I just had to stop somewhere. But incredible career, incredible portfolio. It just was a pleasure to go through, and it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Charles, and thank you, Gina. I mean,
Thank you.
again, I'm honored to do this, and I'm glad it took 31, but I finally made it to
There
your show.
you go.
Okay, great.
Thank
Thanks for joining us. Thanks to everyone who's watching. John, Anthony, Cody, a few others there were watching along with us. So thanks again.
All right.
Have a great weekend, everybody, and thanks again, Mark.
Stay safe and everything.
All right.
All right. Good night.